Nice.
Let's see. Last of Us finished up last night. The TV show, the TV
Mm-hmm.
program. Uh, I have very little to say about it. It's uniformly pretty excellent. It's extremely faithful. Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal do an A++ job, not just with their own acting, but like imitating the characters. I really only have one problem, and it's a really, really big problem.
Is it a
Um,
change or is it
it's
original?
a translation issue of from game to TV show.
Okay.
So with the game, you must stop anything interesting happening every 30 to 40 minutes so that you can have a huge amount of violent murder gameplay,
Gameplay.
right?
Yeah.
You don't have to have that. You can adjust the pacing however you want because it's a TV show. You're telling a story, right? They overdid it. They overdid it by a lot. Um, there is not one infected problem for more than half of the TV show's runtime.
Mm.
And you go and like in the visuals of the narrative, they go almost 2,000 miles across the United States without encountering one infected.
So I
And
feel as if like the thought was I mean I have to watch it obviously, but like I kind of expected that in a way because it's just like, well, let's focus on the story because there's the story and then there's the gameplay and these are
Mhm.
separate things, you know? Um
Totally. I completely understand. There's also way less raiders in the narrative as well,
ah,
like aggressive human people.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like the issue that occurs is like huge, huge portions of the United States appear to be completely safe. And what with the core premise of like, we must cure this horrible plague that you don't see for most of the show's runtime,
Uh
it really like it like evaporates some of the core stake.
Yeah, interesting. Because I've always thought that like anytime a video game has to drop in regular shootout gameplay with either infected or the raiders, you have a problem where you're like, okay, a desolated area doesn't feel that desolate because it's just constantly this thing, right? It's the Tomb Raider problem of
Mhm.
this island that Lara is stuck on is actually overflowing with
With goons, like there's like
crazy goons
2,000, 3,000 goons.
crazy cultist goons that want to get you, nonstop everywhere, massive population because you just need that much gameplay, right? Yeah, so if you kind of focus on the drama, you pull away from that aspect of it, but you definitely need to have like even if it's just like two people or like one bloater, like you got to have a little bit of like, oh, the threat is always there. We're still playing the game as we get to the climax. The threat is, and even if you
Yeah,
kind of like montage it or whatever, like
episode 6, 7, 8, and 9 in the modern story, not in flashbacks, don't have a single infected.
hmm,
Not one. They do flashbacks so that they can put an infected in there,
interesting, interesting.
but like the journey across like half of the US is seen as like mostly problem free. And that like part of The Last of Us's setting is not just like the world ended. It's also that the people who remain are like barely hanging on
Mm-hmm.
because there's roaming groups of raiders, they're
Mm-hmm.
roaming packs of infected, areas are just wildly biohazardous, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Also,
it's it's just not happening. Areas aren't getting attacked, they don't run into monsters. It just seems safe.
that makes the mid-story breather that much important when they make it to the camp and it's actually like there's no fighting in the game for a while. You have
Yeah.
an actual breather and like it creates a tension release, you know, and then it pulls it back up because shit escalates. But like you kind of need to have the contrast from like walking in full of blood and guts, you know, and then like getting to actually breathe for a minute. If they were already kind of able to do so, you might not feel that way.
Like there's also a like, so then, you know, they changed it from spores to the tentacles, and they basically have you know, groups of infected as like underground networks of.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they did.
I
So
didn't know
instead of the mushroom like turning into a big old spore machine, they have like underground little mushroom networks that connect most of the infected as they're just hanging out. And then if you step on one of those tendrils, even if it's far away, it alerts a group to come after you, which is cool. Except part of the problem with that story is that spores can be anywhere, and also there are roaming packs of these things just traversing roads and wilderness. So your isolated town could conceivably encounter infected just wandering off the road, right? With this this tendril thing, the groups of infected tend to literally just lie down and not move until disturbed, which means that, like, yeah, Boston's completely ruined, but if you get 50 kilometers away to an area that just isn't infected, you're not going to deal with infected. You're only going to deal with maybe people got bit through the Boston area coming out.
Because they're not behaving like walkers.
Yeah, and it's like, it kind of removes a lot of the stakes from the core mission of or driving plot. And it also makes... So I watched the final episode last night, and let me tell you, they have once again done a really, really bad job of making a certain character's choice ambiguous. Like, I remember everyone arguing back in 2000 whatever when Last of Us came out about whether or not someone did or did not do the right thing. It's even worse here of like, no, that they did the right thing. They actually did do the correct thing.
Oh, the camera and the music and the world all support the choice.
There's a really so. Do you mind if we segue into spoiler talk for a second? Because I want to talk about the mechanics.
Well, I don't, because I mean, The Last of Us is like I'm going off the game story from a million years ago. So yeah.
So you do or you don't?
Sorry. Spoilers if you don't want to hear anything spoiling Last of Us for anybody listening to the audio right now.
Okay, so the main difference in the game, Ellie is rendered unconscious, and then the Fireflies are like, well, we're going to take her brain apart, but she's unconscious, so we're not going to wake her up. So it'll be easier this way, right? In the show, they attack them and knock them out, and then they knock Joel out, and then they don't tell Ellie that it will kill her and then put her under.
Oh, God. Okay. That's huge, because
that's huge.
That's humongous. The ethical, like, aspect of that. Yeah. I don't
And so like then that. Joel goes on his massive rampage, and like the music is like really dire, and the sound effects are dropped out.
But they're evil scientists kidnapping her to kill her.
Yeah.
As opposed to the like
and like he's really cold and brutal about it. But like,
oh man, okay.
That was not the exact same in the game. They specifically describe that she was unconscious from drowning, and then they roll her into surgery.
Yeah, and that makes, especially when you walk into the last room, and it's not a bunch of Fireflies armed or whatever. It's just dudes in surgery, doctors in outfit that are just working, and you're just like, all of them gotta go, and that's a moment of like, whoa, like. Yeah, but oh fuck, right? That
they
that's really
so
important.
What they do, it's really funny. They actually make like they have a person look to the camera and say, "Hey, listen, we know that vaccination of mushrooms doesn't work. So here's a new pseudoscience bullshit thing that we're gonna say that's not gonna be a vaccine. It's gonna be some chemical messaging thing. So to be like, no, the cure would have totally worked. But then they roll it back with like, yeah, so we told her she'd be fine, and then we put her under, and we're gonna take her brain apart.
Interesting that they changed that, huh?
It's funny because like, the issues that I have with Last of Us 1 in terms of a lack of conflict, like screwing up like some of the elements of the story, will actually work great for season 2. Because season 2's game plot falls apart because there's too much conflict. Season 2, like the moral of revenge is bad makes no sense after you've killed 4,000 people in gameplay. But in a story where you don't have to do that, that will actually make way more sense. But now they're saying that there will actually be much more violence and a lot more infected in the season when it should have been the other way around.
Yeah, no, my favorite thing about Last of Us originally, part 1, is that exact feeling of like that moment, right? Like the ambiguity of, was that the right thing? You know, like that exact feeling of how that ending plays out was just like, ooh, yeah, the personal sacrifice, you know. It's the core of what I really like with how that story plays out.
Last of Us, like the story of Last of Us has one big problem. One, really, only one, and that is there's a horrible act that is meant to be morally ambiguous, and that at every step of the chain of the game's release, the game's re-release, the game's sequel, and now the show, they have fumbled it, and they have made it, it's like, no, it's still the right decision. It was still like, I disagree. I disagree with your portrayal of this as morally ambiguous strongly.
But there's like, some people are gonna in that setting are gonna be like, yeah, I don't care if I have to kill a kid, we're gonna solve this problem, too bad, right?
Yeah,
greater good sacrifices,
greater good.
Yeah.
That being said, it's still worth seeing just for Bella and Pedro Pascal's fucking acting. Like, they do A+ job. Fantastic job. Like the argument of like, if it's so accurate, why does it need to be a TV show instead of a video game? And the answer is because the human face is better at being a human face than the CG man.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
I do want to say, Laura Bailey, Troy Baker, and Ashley Johnson all make appearances as actors.
Okay.
Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson do fantastic jobs. Though it is really, really strange hearing Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker, because their voices are so similar to the characters.
Yeah.
That like, it throws me. Because like, I'm used to TV Joel now, and then I hear Troy Baker, I'm like, oh, right.
Is it a here they come, there they go cameo, or is it like, no, here they are?
No, they play significant characters.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Okay.
They don't play their characters, obviously,
no, but they yeah. Okay.
Though I do feel bad because, like, I can just imagine the swaths of people. He plays Joel in the video game. Just right. And Ashley Johnson, I'm not even gonna go into it. Ashley Johnson does a great job, but like, I'm so used to hearing Bella Ramsey as Ellie that Ashley Johnson still sounds exactly like Ellie, that it's like, oh right, okay, mentally place the characters back into their correct slots into the next scene. But yeah, good show.